Are you a Lord of the Rings fan? Are you anticipating the Rings of Power Season 2? Do you know the importance of the Istari to the Rings of Power Season 2? Have you heard of the Elven rings? Would you like to learn more about them? Well, don't go anywhere, as today's video will discuss all these in detail. First up, what are some questions the Rings of Power Season 2 would have to answer? The second season of the Rings of Power is already in the works in England, and while the first season did resolve several mysteries, such as Sauron's identity and his role in the formation of the first three Rings of Power, there are still many unanswered questions that the next installment in the Lord of the Rings prequel will need to answer. In the final episode of Season 1, we discover that Halbrand was in fact Sauron, and that he had been manipulating Galadriel to gain knowledge that only elves have. We also learned that the three witchy women who followed the Meteor Man as he fell from the sky were incorrect in their assumption that the bearded stranger was the Dark Lord. The stranger is in fact a wizard, though which wizard remains unknown. We saw Isildur's sister, Iaryn, peering into the Palantir, Nori deciding to travel east with the stranger to confront the evil lurking there, and a name check for Galadriel's long-lost husband, Celebrimbor. But the big question is, where are these hints leading to? We make educated guesses and implore showrunners J.G. Payne and Patrick McKay to provide answers next season. Do you have some questions or doubts that you expect Season 2 to answer? Then keep watching and tell us your own in the comment section. Next up is the stranger Gandalf. At the end of the first season, we discover that the stranger is in fact a wizard, not Sauron as the three zealots who hunted him thought. We also learn that he's a good wizard, which he declares to the three witches before banishing them to the darkness. But who exactly among the wizards is he? Well, the answer is unclear, so we don't exactly know who the stranger is, but while he is never referred to as Gandalf in the show, one brief remark almost certainly does. Nori admits that she doesn't know the road as they prepare to embark on an adventure together. As a renowned Gandalf saying goes, if in doubt, always follow your nose. He remarks that the breeze smells pleasant coming from a particular direction, proving that he is in fact Gandalf. It's a wise decision by the Rings of Power to expand on Gandalf's past. After all, his first acquaintance in Middle-earth was a young Harfoot girl with a zest for adventure. It is understandable why he would eventually have a soft place for hobbits, especially fellow intrepid travelers like Frodo and Bilbo Baggins. Coming right up is Sauron's quest for redemption over. Tolkien stated that Sauron went through phases, including one in which he briefly sought redemption following Morgoth's fall. Galadriel advises Halbrand near the end of the season to let go of whatever evil he did to Adar or Adar did to him. But of course, when she tells him this, she has no idea the extent of Halbrand's bad deeds as the evil Sauron, including the murder of her brother. So will Sauron now abandon his half-hearted attempt to be good? Or at the very least, not outright evil? Probably. Up next, how will Arondir, Theo, and Bronwyn factor in Season 2, if at all? From Theo and his mother Bronwyn killing that orc in their home, to Arondir's escape from Adar's prison, to the epic Helm's Deep-style showdown between Adar and the Southland people in the 6th episode, the Southlands provided some of the series' best and most tense moments. But now that Adar has successfully carried out his plan, or more accurately Sauron's plan, to turn the Southlands into Mordor, and the people have been forced to flee, it's unclear what role this trio will play in the upcoming season. In fact, can Arondir and Bronwyn ever be together? Theo appears to have accepted the elf-mortal romance, but the Middle-earth society hasn't been crazy about these pairings in the past or future. Now let's explore. Who are the 5 Istari? In his writing, Tolkien identified 5 Istari. In The Lord of the Rings, 3 are named: Gandalf the Grey Wizard, Saruman the White Wizard, and Radagast the Brown Wizard. Gandalf and Saruman, played by Ian McKellen and Christopher Lee, appear in Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy, while Radagast appears in Jackson's The Hobbit trilogy, though in the books he's only briefly mentioned by name in The Hobbit, and Gandalf describes an encounter with him in the Fellowship of the Ring. Alatar and Palando, the remaining 2 wizards, are both blue wizards. Tolkien mentions others of the Istari who went into the east of Middle-earth and did not come into these tales in the Silmarillion. However, in other writings, Tolkien speculated that they may have played a role in subverting Sauron's power in the east in a way that aided his eventual defeat. The Istari are all Maiar, spirits who aided the Valar and were sent to Middle-earth to prevent Sauron's victory, especially after he lost the One Ring in the Third Age. The timeline of their arrival in Middle-earth is hazy. Círdan the Shipwright, who will appear in Season 2, is the only one who knows when each came, according to the Silmarillion. He is the master of the Grey Havens where the Istari first arrived. Tolkien also changed his mind about the wizards, particularly the blue wizards, but different versions place them in the Second or Third Age. So why are the Istaris important to the Rings of Power Season 2? The character known as the Stranger, Daniel Weyman, is revealed in the season finale of The Lord of the Rings Rings of Power to be an Istari, aka a wizard, but what does this mean and how will it affect Season 2? The most well-known wizards, Gandalf and Saruman, are the main characters in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings story, but there are several other wizards mentioned. So who is the Stranger? The Stranger was one of the most popular candidates in theories about Sauron's identity at the start of the Rings of Power, and while several clues throughout the season said otherwise, the cultists at the start of the finale initially seemed to confirm that theory. However, thanks to the friendship of the Harfoots, particularly Nori, who told him he's not a peril, the Stranger rejected the identity, declaring, "I'm good." Up next, Elven Rings of Power. What are the things you need to know about the three rings? By the end of The Lord of the Rings of Power Season 1, the three Elven Rings of Power had been forged. The Rings of Power is a prequel series to The Lord of the Rings that builds toward the creation of the One Ring. So naturally, this means that the other rings, 19 in total, divided among the various races of Middle-earth, must first be forged. As a result, it's no surprise that the first season ended with the creation of the first three rings. According to J.R.R. Tolkien's notes, the Elven Rings were created because the Elves feared the passage of time. The Lord of the Rings of Power, revealed that the Elves are dying, or instead fading, and must leave Middle-earth or perish. Celebrimbor, an Elven smith, discovered a potential solution in mithril and was inspired to turn a sample from the Dwarves into a crown. However, plans changed due to Sauron's manipulation, who had gained Celebrimbor's trust under the alias Halbrand. The story differs slightly from the one told in Tolkien's notes and appendices for The Lord of the Rings, but it is clearly based on them. Vilya, Nenya, and Narya are the three Elven rings. Lastly, how did Celebrimbor make the three Rings of Power? Celebrimbor was one of the greatest smiths of all time, but he couldn't forge with mithril. On the other hand, Sauron had been experimenting with this type of magic for quite some time, and he was able to give advice on how to use mithril, first suggesting an alloy, and then a gentler method of forging rather than the more forceful approaches Celebrimbor had been attempting. The original plan had been for Celebrimbor to fashion a mithril crown to be worn by Elven King Gil-galad, but there wasn't enough mithril to go around, so Celebrimbor settled for rings instead. Galadriel was the one who decided on the number of rings. She realized the Elves had been duped after discovering Halbrand was Sauron. She insisted on 2 rings despite being warned by a vision that one would create a ruler and a potential tyrant, and one would sow division. Instead, 3 should be used to allow for the possibility of balance. The 3 Elven rings contained Feanor's jewels and 3 Silmarils that contained some of the light from the 2 trees of Valinor. They were regarded as some of the most beautiful objects in Middle-earth, and Morgoth, Sauron's predecessor as Dark Lord, coveted them. These gems, which contain the power of the immortal realm Valinor, are most likely the reason the Elven rings can control the flow of time. Alright, that's it for today's video. I hope you got some information from it. Let us know in the comments section. Also, let us know if there is anything you're looking forward to most in the next season. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe.